for local staff. And yeah, as I said, anyone who wants to interject, ask questions, add their own experiences, then please do feel free to jump in and share so that we can all benefit. So a little bit about myself. I'm Becky. I've been teaching for 17 years, and most of that has been in the international sector. Prior to being in Bangkok, I was based in Kenya, where I was head of sixth form for a number of years. And now I am, well, not really in Bangkok, on the outskirts of Bangkok, as head of secondary. Pink, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. Actually, I used to be a teacher, an English teacher, in Teach for Thailand, and I taught English at a school and at Klong Tei. It's the city center of Bangkok. And after that, I was a project manager of a social enterprise doing a research in data analysis and trend. I train students and sometimes I train teacher. And now I'm currently working at a country manager of Go Rising, the foundation and the NGO that works for girls' education. And I train teachers for a specific interactive curriculum, and then they can use this curriculum with their students. I'm not an official teacher, just an educator.
Not just an educator, Pink. It's one of the most important professions on the planet. Don't put yourself down.
Okay, thank you.
So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the structures within international schools and the kind of the way that the schools work from early years all the way through up to the much bigger kids, the kind of roles that are available, what you might want to do to make an application, and then some top tips for standing out in terms of making your application successful. This took a little bit of research actually, because despite all my years in international education, I wasn't 100% familiar with how American and British curriculum kind of leveled off, because what we refer to as year two as first grade for America. It means that it feels like it's out of sync and it's difficult to understand. But in terms of applying for positions, if you were specifically looking for a certain age range, you'd obviously need to be looking for roles within one of these two areas. So for example, if you were specifically looking to look after and work with very small children in the British sector, I'm over talked today, in the British sector, that would be the early years section of a school, whereas in an American school, that would be the kindergarten section. So that slide takes you through the younger age groups. Excuse me, and an IB school would refer to that as the PYP, the primary years program. As you move into secondary school, as we'd call it in Britain, in comparison to high school, as they might call it in America, then, oops, I'm not very good at going back on slides. You'd think we'd be better at this by now, wouldn't you? These many months of online teaching. In the British curriculum, we like to make things super complicated. So we have year groups that are broken into key stages. And then when you get to key stage 5, some schools refer to this as sixth form. So it's key stage 5, but it's the sixth form and it's years 12 and 13. Which can cause a lot of complications and issues for people not familiar with the British system, because people like myself will interject all those different names from one sentence to the next. So I could at one point refer to them as year 12, then key stage 5, and in the next sentence say sixth form, which doesn't make it very easy for parents sometimes, and it doesn't make it very easy for people that have not been educated through the British system. So hopefully that overview helps to give you an idea of which levels mean what, depending on what system that you're working in. For international schools in Thailand, it is a legal requirement that schools have a school director, and the school director is, I suppose, the go-to point, the person that liaises between the government, the school, and the school management team. So in many cases, the school director is often involved in the school in a financial way as well. So you'll find many school directors in Thailand are family members of board owners, for example, or themselves a board owner, which can sometimes cause a conflict of interests, but that doesn't seem to matter. That's the system and that's how it is. Usuma's laughing because she knows this system very well, don't you, Usuma? This sometimes means that the recruitment process for Thai members of staff will involve the Thai director as a person who is very influential within the school. But more often than not, it's not necessarily the director who is involved, because sometimes they're not involved in the day-to-day running of a school. That will very much depend on the individual school as to whether or not the school director's around. Emma, does your school director play much of a part in things at your school?
Not as much as maybe in some other international settings I've been in. I'm aware of who he is. Maybe I would invite him to like some of our events back when we were able to have events. But yeah, a little bit less than what I'm used to perhaps. But I think ultimately with decisions, with HR decisions, the buck stops there.
Yeah, definitely. Our school director's on site every day and is very involved, but that's not always easy. That can sometimes make decisions more political than they need to be, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Most international schools in Thailand will also then have a school manager who is in every day, who is involved in the running of the school, and again that would be someone who would work closely with the academic team in order to make sure that the school is functioning and everything works as it should. And then schools will have the academic management section. So you'll have one person in charge of the whole school. That person usually oversees the 3 sections of either early years, kindergarten, primary or junior, high school or secondary. And then you'll have a head of each section. Often for no rhyme or reason, international schools will refer to them as the principals. And I've seen principal be used for the person at the top. I've seen principal be used for the sections in the middle. I've seen principal not used at all. I've seen principal with heads of section. There is no rhyme and reason as to why schools choose the names that they do. I think sometimes it's more to do with the clientele that they're trying to associate themselves with. Yeah, there's no answer, think, Isma. I don't know why. We've changed. I was once assistant principal and now I'm head of secondary because we changed from principals to heads. And I think it's to do with whether or not the school wants to have a very traditional set of hierarchies, so that they're fitting in with this idea of British education and British values. I work for a gentleman who insists on calling himself a headmaster, doesn't see the value in referring to himself as a head teacher, which I think would show where his expertise lied. But it means a lot to him to be called a headmaster. I would never in a million years want to be headmistress. That gives me a vision of something from Matilda and Miss Trunchbull and having a horrible hair and a really bad dress sense. So I'm not sure we will still have those in 20 years time. But if you're looking for roles and you're informed of who's going to be interviewing you, for example, it might be that the school manager is interviewing you with someone from the academic section, which could be any title at all. I think that's about it for structures, unless anyone's got a structure that they're aware of or they've heard of that's a bit different to that.
I think about key stage 3 managers, sometimes the key stages can be confusing if you're not used to the British school system, and you might have an overall manager of that, or you might have a pastoral or an academic head, which was new to me in the private system, this person who's in charge of separating those two.
Yes, absolutely. And you might also have a deputy head whole school is quite common. So sometimes the head teacher is what I'm going to say, has more of a CEO role in a lot of schools. They deal with the finances, they deal with the bigger picture of what's happening in the school. And then the deputy head would oversee more of the academic management across all sections of the school. So sometimes you see that split. And in that case, the deputy head would be more involved in recruitment than the head would, for example. So in terms of positions for local hire, they're usually split between positions within the administrative side of the school and positions within the education side. And this is purely from my experience. I've only worked in one school in Thailand, so again, I'm by no means an expert, and this might not look the same in every school. But we have members of staff who teach Thai language, as you'd expect, and Thai culture, and that's a team of 4 who work very closely together as part of a bigger languages team. So they work with the Chinese and the Spanish teachers to form a world languages department. Our teaching assistants, many of them are Thai. We also have teaching assistants who are Filipino, and we also have teaching assistants who are British. So they all together work as a team, but we have many Thai teaching assistants that work in different sections of the school. So not just in early years and primary, but we also have a SEN, or a special educational needs TA, who is Thai and has a background in that through her education. And that's a huge advantage for us as a school, because obviously she can communicate so successfully with the parents, meaning that that's a closer connection between her and the parent body. We also have specialist TAs in PE, music, and we have in the past had specialist TAs in art as well. And then the entire administrative team are all Thai nationals, forming our HR department. We have ladies who work in admin and work doing liaison work to translate for people like myself or other members of the academic team. Our admissions team work very closely with everybody else, our IT support, and then obviously the PAs that we have within the school for various people who need someone to help them organise their time. Is there any positions that anyone else is aware of that I've skipped from that list?
The marketing department, which depending what you teach, I know I work with them a lot. They're all Thai except for one in our school.
Yeah, of course.
I've seen like a position called something along the line of like the social outreach coordinator. So this person, this Thai national, would be working with all class teachers to implement volunteer activities for the students. So they need someone as a mediator between Thai communities and the projects that the students want to implement.
Yeah, well, that's a lovely role. Yeah, I think that sounds like a great position in a school. Now, I could only think of one place. My school advertises a lot of roles on Ajahn, which I think is quite a well-known website amongst Thai people for finding positions, but maybe other people have got other places to look for roles to add to that list.
I don't know if it pertains to here, but I know when I worked in Kenya before, a lot of the local staff weren't aware of TES, Times Educational Supplement, as much as maybe if you'd gone to university in the UK. Yeah, and there's not many of the roles for non-teaching roles that we advertise via the TES. So, but yeah, I think there are other websites that you can find positions. And maybe if you know of some, you could pop them on the chat to share with others. So in terms of what schools will go through and the kind of process needed to apply for a job, the qualifications that staff have matters. The vast majority of people working in our school, whether they're Thai or British, have a bachelor's degree in something or other. A lot of our TAs have got bachelor degrees in education. The HR team, as you'd expect, have got backgrounds in administration and marketing. Then you need to find a position that you actually want, that you think is suitable for you and you think you've got the right qualifications for. Then obviously you need to make that application. For a lot of schools, that will be an application form only, maybe with a CV attached, so that you can put a little bit more detail about your skills. And then obviously there's the interview process. And obviously at the moment, a lot of schools are using online interviews, but as things are easing up, we're starting to have a few more interviews on site for positions that are being locally hired for. And I think that the skill set required to do an online interview compared to an in-person interview can be quite different. You need to think maybe a little bit more carefully when you're going to a school site as to how to present yourself, how to put yourself forward. So what are international schools looking for? 9 times out of 10, having a good level of English is incredibly important. However, we have occasionally in my school recruited someone because of their skill set and then given them the support they needed to build their English and to gain more confidence to use English with the British staff.
It's also a great way to develop themselves. So it's a good opportunity to get a good, strong member of staff who then potentially has everything you need, but the English is something missing. It's not necessarily something international schools would dismiss that candidate for, because obviously we're very well placed to then give them that skill set and help them to develop their English. For some roles, that written element of English is then also going to be important if you're going to be in an administrative role. TAs, less so, but there will be instances where TAs need to communicate in writing in English as well. So being confident to do that is important. Having an appreciation of the different education systems, I think, is something, if you're not an expert in, it wouldn't be a problem, but you'd at least need to do your research and to do some swatting up on exactly what you're stepping into. So I recently did some interviews for someone to have a liaison role within the school, working very closely with the academic team to then speak with parents, and obviously understanding the different sections of the school, understanding the qualifications that we teach, all of those things, because they are part of the vocabulary of a school. It's a very quick pace in a school. Things move very quickly, things have to happen very quickly. And so if you're going to be in that environment, you need to have an understanding of exactly what people are talking about. I think having experience with working with children is a good thing. Obviously, if you're going to work in the admissions department, it's not going to be essential, but whatever section of a school you're in, there's children there. And I know at the moment with COVID restrictions, all members of our school community on staff are being expected to support in different ways, whether that's taking temperatures, whether that's taking registers and supporting with that kind of thing. So if the sound of children screaming, laughing and being children is something that annoys you, there is no position in the school that you're going to enjoy, because there's always children and you'll always be expected to interact with them. Working with different nationalities, I think having an open mind and being open to having broader experiences with a range of different people is something that is essential. Sometimes cultural differences can cause a problem. You have to be aware that sometimes British people, for example, can be very blunt. British people may be very quick to swear. I know that the admin staff by my office have probably heard some things they shouldn't coming out of my mouth. But often British people will say things when it doesn't really mean very much, potentially. They sound off, they vent, and then it's done with. Americans, for example, are very open about how they're feeling, can be very positive all the time, and that's a nice thing in a working environment. But again, it's a switch and it's a change, and you have to be used to that, and you have to be open to being around different people with different ideas. Also, if you're working with British or American staff in order to do translation work, I think it's really important to have a concept and an understanding of the point of view of the person that you're trying to translate for. And that works both ways. For someone like myself, sometimes parents have issues that I may find difficult to appreciate or understand. And it's for my Thai colleagues sometimes to explain to me the point of view of the parent, to break that down for me, and then vice versa. For some parents, not really appreciating the point of view of the school and why things are done in a certain way, being able to sort of slowly navigate that idea through the cultural understandings is something you have to be quite patient about. So I think that's a very specific skill set, and it's not easy to demonstrate. It's not easy to show that you have it, but it's an important set of skills to have. But obviously, international schools have very high standards in terms of presentation, and how you present yourself to parents is something that you will be judged on. You need to look your best. You need to have a concept of what is the right attire for a school. I know we've definitely had an administration staff who look fantastic in a very short skirt, but it's not necessarily the best thing to wear. So having that understanding and appreciation that you're also around teenage boys, and that you need to try and keep yourself looking professional. And then being personable, again, it's back to being around children and being in a school environment, having a smile, being ready to have a chat, being ready to answer random questions that small children ask whatever adult they find first, and being open to that. So they're the things I think are important, but I'm sure other people have got some other things they could add to the list.
I think some of the local staff that I've worked with internationally, that it's really been a great fit, is them realizing that we, the international teachers, are out of our home comfort, and that we need some help to understand the new environment we're living in. And those local staff that I've worked with that really, gone out of their way to give us local tips, or I don't know, tell us where to get the best school shoes or whatever it is. It's really created that community of us supporting each other. And they're usually the staff that have probably stayed there the longest in the school, the backbone of the school often.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And I think, almost all international schools are very welcoming places, and, all the staff socialize and spend time together. So you have to be ready to socialize with lots of different nationalities. And as I'm sure many of you know, lots of teachers like to spend their time socializing. It's a big part of being a teacher. It's something that's often comes with the territory. So if you're looking to have that side of your work life balanced off, and you're ready to socialize and make friends with people as well, that's really welcomed amongst the most school communities. I think that's actually all. Under Pink's advice, we thought we'd keep a large section of time for questions, because obviously there's many of us here with different experiences, having worked in different types of schools. So hopefully we can answer questions together if anyone's got anything that they would like to ask us.
Maybe we can ask, like, where are our participants from, and what are they looking at? What are they looking for now? Maybe they want to apply for any schools here in Bangkok or anything. Maybe you can like introduce yourself and what are you doing? What are you looking for? Yeah, maybe you can start with Alice. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alice Albert. I am currently working as a lecturer here at one of the Thai universities. I help out with international relations work. So I'm here to get some great tips as to how we can implement some of the things that I learned here today at my university.
Glad to know you, Alice. And like, we're glad that someone who is working at a university came here also. Yeah, thank you. And maybe Nitsi.
Hi, everyone. It's really nice to joining this occasion. I'm pretty new and also surprised that many of you currently working or was working in Thailand. Well, I was there just for vacation, and yeah, still I'm from Indonesia anyway, so it's nearby from Thailand. It's a couple hours my flight, and yeah, a few years back I tried to apply some vacancies in Bangkok, but maybe it wasn't not my time yet, and until now I think. So currently I'm still dealing in a education field, and I'm teaching in a preschool, but actually I'm pretty not really experienced, but I've been in preschool up to the high school, high schoolers, because before the pandemic, I was the career counselor for local schools in Jakarta, and I was in the list cutting off due to the pandemic, and thank God I got back in. So praise the Lord for that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nitsi. Thank you for joining and open to us. And like, welcome to Bangkok one day. I guess, like, I believe you can come here. maybe like you can connect to some teachers, some international teachers in our Facebook group, and then if there are any positions call for job, maybe you can like apply from there. Okay, welcome to Thailand if you want to come. Okay, so maybe Laura. Laura and Joanna, they already typed here. And do you wanna speak, or both Laura and Joanna, if you wanna say hi? Okay, so let's just type here. And actually, because this video is recorded, so we can upload it into our channel, and then other Thai teachers who may like wanna apply for international schools positions, they can come back here to watch. And like Becky, you did an amazing job introducing international school system here. Okay, we have one more here, Usama. I'm sorry, I skipped you, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's totally fine. So I'm technically here to work as the translator for this section, just in case we have other Thai nationals who might be interested in working for international schools. And I think what Becky was talking about is extremely informational for us as Thai educators in general, because even for me, I didn't know the differences between key stages. Like I assumed that the key stage 1 is year 1 until year 3, similar to the system in Thailand. We have 4 stages, 3 years each. So it was surprising for me to saw that chart and see, okay, the British system is much more complicated than I thought. Yeah, and usually the school system in Thailand, like the normal public schools, we don't actually separate the academic side with the administrative side. Like a teacher who's an English teacher might be working as how would you say, like a track keeper for all of the school items, would be like responsible for buying all of the school supplies for the school. Or let's say a teacher who's a little bit better at math and planning might also be in charge for the school supermarket, like the little market at school. Yeah, so I think this is one thing that's really important for Thai nationals to understand, that in international school systems, that's clearly divided. Yeah.
I think in international schools, we have jobs for everything. There's lots of different roles. But actually, I've just realized one thing that I didn't mention in the presentation was some of the benefits of working in an international school, and why it is that so many people are seeking those positions, because a number of our Thai staff, their children come to the school either at a discounted rate or with a free place, depending on the position that they're holding. And obviously that has a lot of weight for a lot of families. The downside of that, if you can think of one, not so much here, but I know colleagues who I work with in Kenya felt that by putting their child in the school that they were working in, maybe made their position different, because they wouldn't want to move their child out of the school if they then disagreed. They felt that meant they had to do everything the school always asked of them, because they were in a, they didn't want to disrupt their child's education. So rather than do that, they chose to put their child in a different school, which was an interesting take on it, that they didn't want to give themselves entirely to the school. But I think actually some of that is a good thing, because then it creates a community, it creates a sense of family. And that's one of the bonuses of an international school, especially if it is a through school. We attract Thais to work in the school who are very young children, because they can see then their place in the school developing, and their child going through the school and hopefully coming out at the other end and having a range of friends and opportunities. A lot of international schools offer a medical cover, even for the Thai staff, and that's something that attracts many people to working in the setting. The cover may be not as much as the expat staff would receive, because I think for a lot of Thai people, they understand the systems better as well. They would probably be looking for a more cost-effective treatment. They know the hospitals better. They know where they'd want to get their treatment, whereas foolish expats like me, maybe just the first hospital I stumble into would be fine. And then Thai colleagues go, why did you go there? Don't ever go to that hospital. So that's lunches. I know it sounds like a small thing, but a free lunch goes a very long way. I very much appreciate my free lunch every day, and I think that's a great bonus to have. Oh, Ema, help me out. What other benefits do we have?
I don't get a free lunch, just so you know.
So not?
Oh, so what I was going to
you.
say, yeah, is kind of two contrasts. One, on the no free lunch, is before I'd worked in a state sector, just a local, I've had that experience, like a local primary school in London, and then international schools. It really does feel like being part of a business. And if you've only ever worked in schools, it's quite eye-opening in that respect of having these marketing department and having the procurement department. And obviously the bigger the school name, then the bigger that might be slightly separate to the teachers. But on the flip side of that, what Becky was saying about the community, I know the local staff that I've worked with internationally, that really stood out are people who, you know, they might work in admin, but they're really great at rugby. So they help with the rugby team, or they help me in the theatre with lights, or they're interested in, and that can be a real exciting benefit of working in not just a regular business, but a business that is a school. And I think if you were applying as a local staff and you have skill set that you might think is not linked at all to the job, I would, you know, take the initiative at the right opportunity to say you have that skill set, because schools offer everything, especially at the minute. You know, maybe you're great on the skateboard, that's something that, you know, everything will find its way in the school somewhere. So I wouldn't be afraid to speak up and say, I can do this, because I'm sure the school will then see you as much more valuable.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good bit of advice. I think schools are one of the few employers that see the whole candidate potentially. You know, we want to see what else you can offer to the students as well as to the department you're working in. I recently did interviews for an administration liaison position, and if people are interested for me to share some of the things candidates did to consider not doing, I think one of the key things that stood out for me for the Thai candidates was the willingness to please. They wanted to put across that they would always, you know, listen to the parent and take on board what the parent's saying, and you know, they wanted to take a lot of time to give that customer service element. But I think one thing that's very important in a school is to be able to know when that's not appropriate. You know, sometimes children do the wrong thing, sometimes parents do the wrong thing, and sometimes as a school we have to have very difficult sort of sensitive conversations with those parents, and the translation of that's really hard, because sometimes the parent desperately wants the Thai translator to see their point of view, but sometimes it's not relevant, sorry to say. And so I think, you know, it's having that understanding, and I think that's that cultural element of it, of not always being there to please, although there is a customer side to it, because our parents are the customers. In education, sometimes the customer isn't right, and it was quite difficult for some of the candidates to appreciate the questions we were asking about how they would translate that kind of thing. It was something they hadn't come across before. They hadn't really considered that type of question or how they would answer it. We had, yeah, sorry, no, go ahead. No.
Just on the cultural idea, I haven't interviewed local staff here, but in Kenya, and it's being aware of what you're buying into, and often the secular nature of international schools. So a lot of the Kenyan TA positions would speak about, they're very Christian and speak about God, and you know, I grew up in Catholic Ireland, so I know all about that. But this, from the school's perspective, they want to cater for an international clientele, international children, international parents. And so if you are bringing your own culture, it's not to say they don't want your own culture to be part of that, but if your answer to everything to a primary school age child is, oh, I'll say a prayer for you, or God will answer you, and it's a secular school, that's going to come across as the wrong fit. And I think that a lot of the Kenyan local candidates, that was a big downfall. I don't know if that's your experience here, Becky, and it's something similar, but culturally you just have to think more in an international way.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, I think you have to be ready for the melting pot of an international school. You know, often American schools will be mostly Americans and British mostly British, but that's not to say that's always the case. You do have, you know, we have Chinese staff, we have Spanish staff. You have to be ready to think on your feet in terms of not offending or stepping on toes of a lot of different people who maybe don't even understand each other's cultural references even. So that can be a really nice thing as well, though. That makes it a really interesting place to be, and, you know, somewhere where you can learn a lot. And I know colleagues from previous schools have travelled because of the people they've met and been able to find different opportunities and experiences because of being part of that community. But yeah, I think the point about the secular nature of international schools is a really important one. Although obviously in Thailand things are a bit different because Thai culture plays a big part in even what we have to teach by law. But that's been really interesting. I've been observing some of the Thai culture lessons recently, and it's interesting to me how that's structured in Thailand, and it's one of the great mysteries to me, if I'm honest, as to what the Thai departments have to do. You know, they have a huge folder of things the MOE say they have to teach every year, and that goes against what a lot of the other departments are doing, in that they value the ability to be broad in their teaching, and they value the ability to have some autonomy in what they're teaching, and yet it's the Thai department who face the most restrictions. You know, they get inspected by the MOE, they have to submit lots of paperwork to the MOE. So I think sometimes for the Thai department there's a lot more to cover and a lot more bridges to cross than the other teachers have to experience. So I suppose as well, looking at other departments, they feel that they don't really always appreciate or understand what they have to do as Thai staff. I've gone completely off piece there, sorry. Has anyone else got any questions?
One other thing that just comes to mind is if you're looking at a primary school position, for example, and it's a British-based school or whatever the culture of the school is, they might be teaching topics that are in the history or the geography of that. So I've been in Kenya, for example, teaching about seasons with children who've maybe never experienced seasons, or it's doing maths where you're using British pounds and these kind of things. So I would think if you were looking for a teaching assistant position, it would be a good idea to have a look at what the curriculum is, and maybe as you might not have grown up with that. Equally so, I've been in Kenya and have to teach about Kenyan tribes. So it's a great learning point, but I would just be aware of what you have to, what are the topics in a primary school or even further up that might come in that you might not have had as much cultural experience yourself.
Great. Well, if anyone's got any last minute questions, now would be the time to ask, because we'll shortly be heading over to the wrap up session back in the main room. So any last minute questions? Okay, great. So basically everyone needs to, if you're staying for the question and answer, then you need to go back to the original link that you were sent from the start. So we'll see you all in that room. There we go. Thanks kindly. That's
I put a Zoom link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
I put a Zoom link here, and you can click this link and then go to the Q&A section, the last part of our meeting today. Maybe you have like 3 minutes to relax, to like stand up and like, okay, make moves to relax yourself, and then see you guys at our last section. And thank you all for being here and exchange your experiences with us, especially Emir and Becky. You are the MVP today. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Lovely to meet you all. Bye. See you in the last session.
See you.